22 years ago, it was a very, very lonely place doing pro-family, pro-life work, which is what the movement you're engaged in. If you weren't aware of that, that's really what category it falls under. And so it's thrilling to see so many new faces and young faces ready to go out and make a difference and care. And that's a good thing. So we went, there's a young woman who does, her name's Esme Weathers, and she does all of the bookkeeping for United Families International. Esme is ethnic Chinese, but she grew up, oops, what just happened? Did we lose something? But she grew up, I think we're all right still. Never mind, it's good, it flipped. We're gonna get through this. Esme grew up though in Malaysia. And so there is a lot of time where Esme reminds us or teaches us about her heritage, particularly Chinese heritage. And Esme has told me that the year 2021 is the year of the ox. And I said, oh, Esme, the Chinese have to have gotten that wrong because this is the year of the bear, for sure, the mama bear. And you probably feel and understand that sense because over the last 18 months, there has been a dramatic shift, I'd say a sea change, as parents around the country have come to realize that many in the government and in the education system do not have the best interests of our children, our grandchildren in mind. In fact, we've seen mask mandates, normal school routines, all of the things that life in general has pretty much been turned upside down. And many parents have taken a deep dive into what their children are being taught. And we now can't ignore the fact that critical race and gender identity theories, comprehensive sexuality education, social emotional learning, among other things, are mainstream now within our schools. No matter the community that you live in, they're there. And as moms in particular have stood up and said, that's enough. These are our children, and we determine how and what they're going to be taught. And oh, by the way, education establishment, did I mention that we pay your salaries? And yet we continue to see a steady stream of insinuation from the media, the culture online, that there is a war on women. And this, don't tread on me, you notice that's shaped it like a uterus. Well, I would offer that the real war is on our children. And it's a war on what our children will be taught and thus believe, and who will get there first. A friend and colleague, Katie Faust, shared this piece of wisdom. The first person who discusses a topic with a child will be viewed by that child as the expert on that topic. Parents, we need to get there first, no matter how difficult or controversial the topic. And it's with that in mind that we're here tonight to share some tools to help you do just that. And those are the HomeFront project and its companion piece, HomeFront Kids. And we're going to spend some time and talk about each of those in depth. But first, a bit of the backstory. The HomeFront project has been 20 years in the making, with scores of United Family staff and volunteers contributing. When I first got involved in the pro-family, pro-life effort, like many people, I knew very little about the issues, but I like facts, I like statistics a lot. And as I became more educated, I grew convinced that if people simply knew the facts on these difficult issues, we could turn the tide on things like abortion, LGBT issues, cohabitation, marriage, religious freedom. We could do that. So I dedicated massive amounts of time to compiling research, which culminated at first in a series we call Guide to Family Issues. And I had brought a couple of them here so you could see what they actually look like in print. Part of the problem with these is they were very, very content dense. And difficult for people to wade through. So, okay, we said, maybe there's another way to get this out. In fact, this first one was produced back in 2004. This guide to sexual orientation was back in 2004. So you can imagine how far we've come in terms of sexual orientation, LGBT issues since 2004. So we tried this method where we put things in infographics. So at the same time, we were holding small meetings, cottage meetings, and brought in experts to speak on topics. But obviously 15 years ago, it was difficult to get much reach because we didn't have podcasts and Zoom and the various technologies. Plus, as I was talking with people here tonight, there simply wasn't an interest. People did not understand what was happening. It was a rare person who caught the fire and came forward and got engaged. So about that same time, the book club thing started to become a thing. It was something that was now mainstream in many communities and friend groups. And we began at UFI thinking, what if people are going to get together to share food and friendship and discuss a good book? What if we created a tool, a platform where they would come together to learn about an issue, and a challenging topic instead of a book? And the HomeFront project was born. Also, the goal with each one of these different things was just to educate people, to get them comfortable with the issues so that they would have the courage and the confidence when they went out to talk to people or when they were addressing it. So I'm going to go here and we're going to take a look at.
Okay, you are HomeFront and we've got your back. You may have noticed it's not very easy to have certain conversations these days. Social, political, and religious topics can be tough to navigate with family, friends, neighbors, coworkers, or the guy on the train. If these conversations have left you feeling alone, we're here with information, ideas, and connections.
Thank you. I'll just keep talking about HomeFront. So you can either join a group, and we have a tool in the toolbar. You can contact us, and we can connect you with a group. It's intended. COVID in the middle of this did a number because we had originally intended it as in-person book club type things. But then with COVID, we said, you know what? There's really no reason why this can't be done online, and you can't connect with people and do your book club virtually. Or there's no reason why an individual can't do that solely. So go to homefrontproject.com or .org, and you should be able to see. And when you get there, you'll see there are 20 topics, and how we chose those topics was an interesting journey. Again, if you look at the pro-family, pro-life effort, it does break out into issues on marriage and family, issues about life, issues about parenting, and issues about religion, which includes religious freedom. Goes into life issues, sexuality, and there's a method to the madness on our order of this. So let's, for example, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to go into sexuality education, which is comprehensive sex ed. And you'll see the landing page. You're teaching my child what? And if you scroll down, you're going to say it's broken out into 3 compartments or 3 parts: before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting, which we call the therefore what. You come, you've learned all this, what are you going to do about it? So if you click on before the meeting, it will load and show you a series of articles. And the point is, before you go to your discussion group, you're going to read 2 or more articles. Because we know, how many of you have ever gone to a book club and never opened the book? Guilty as charged. I've done that plenty of times. So we know people will do that, but our hope will be that you'll read. And Brooke's going to talk to you a little bit about why another way that you're going to get into this. And then there are a series of videos. So watch a video. If nothing else, do that. And then down below, if you want to take a deeper dive, there's supplemental reading material, and you can read any or all of this and more videos. We included books, so that you can look at books, and if you really want to jump in with both feet. And eventually, once you've done this, at the very bottom, examples of comprehensive sex ed, the next step is during the meeting. And this section is pretty simple. It is a case of discussion questions. So when you're at your book club or when you're studying yourself or online, you don't have to use these questions, but it's a series of questions. We tried to craft the questions so that it would steer the discussion to some degree. We didn't want it to get out in the weeds somewhere. So right there, that part's pretty simple. After the meeting, therefore, what are you going to do with this new information? And we have a section originally, talk to your children, although Brooke and Utah Parents United have taken this to a whole new level. But that's in there. And then talk to your other family members and friends. So these are all questions that you can engage them with. And then if you're highly motivated, how do you want to engage with the broader community? This section will tell you about how, in this case, go down to school board meeting, or if you're going to contact a legislator, and how it gives you ideas for doing that. Each section has talking points, so that if you just need to print off a page and you need to have something in your hand, and when you're ready to go, a lot of research is included in this. There's that section. Finally, culminating in social media helps. Let me show you how that works. Research, social media helps, and there's an entire section on social media up under resources. So if you want to grab a me, they're already pre-prepared for each one of those units. You can put it up. There's advocacy tips that are available, and we've compiled those also over in the resources, which are up on that top section. And you can see we also have personal stories we've gathered, advocacy tips, which is all of these that are at the end of each unit in the book, talking points all in place. Let's look at social media helps, if I can get this broken out by the topic. So we're talking about sexuality ed. You can see the various memes with research, so you can just grab one of these and post it. I hope everyone's moved over into resources, into social media helps. You want to make your own? Fabulous. We'd love that. It's just a case of we were trying to jumpstart the process and give you something right here to work on. There are 20 HomeFront topics, and you can see them listed there. And as we developed this thing, it came to us, there actually is an order to this. There's a way to learn these topics. And I will tell you, you don't want to start down here with gender incongruence or the sexual orientation issues. You need to start at the beginning, because each of these lay a foundation for this. These are the hardest, the sexual orientation, gender incongruence, transgenderism. You have to be very careful with how you even use those words. You need to know the why of all these other issues before you understand. Anyone want to take a guess why we selected feminism? Why would we start with feminism? Any ideas? I'm curious what you think about that. If that was an odd choice.
Probably where it started, where a lot of the problems began.
If you can't hear, one of the ladies has said, because that's where it all began. Say it again, so I quote you.
That's where it all started. That's where the problems began.
That's where it all started. That's where the problems began.
I think also, like, I used to say, oh, of course I'm a feminist. Like, why wouldn't I be for women's rights? So it's gotten twisted and different and diluted and means something entirely different that I wouldn't identify with now.
She's saying it's entirely different than what she originally identified with or thought it was. Is that, I don't want to misrepresent. I came up through the age of feminism. It was a big deal. I was a feminist. I no longer will claim that title, and I will leave that to each individual person, but you need to understand that without feminism, the sexual revolution would never have occurred. And there's some major things connected to that. And almost all of this is breakdown in the family, started with attitudes towards family that were instilled via feminism. So we could talk a long time about that. A few weeks ago, I ran across this quote on a feminist website. And it was all, I mean, I have not been able to get it out of my mind because I think it encapsulates where feminism has gone. And for those of you that can't see it, it says motherhood, where dreams go home to die. And the tragedy of that, yeah, we could talk at length about that, but I'm in a little bit later, we're going to talk about the how we got here part and how people that we would see that don't think like this, how we got there. But before we do, again, there's a reason for this. You're free to move about in HomeFront and choose your topics and go. But Brooke is going to tell us now how the HomeFront Kids concept came to be. Again, we had a section in there in children, but Brooke and Utah Parents United approached us and said, if you really want to get to the hearts and minds of the people that we're involved with, you need to help them teach their children. So with that, I'll let Brooke.
Could you go back to the other screen?
Which one?
That one.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So one of the first things I noticed when I went onto this site was Feminism 101, Feminism 201. And I wondered, how does that apply to my kids? How does that apply to me? Because as busy moms, yes, we want to learn this. We want to be able to understand it. Go to book club. It would be nice to understand all of these issues. But most of us, put ourselves last and our kids first. So if there's a way to frame this, even though it's obviously for all families, if we were to frame that and convey it with the titles about what it would do for your children, that's where the first thing that I thought of was, let's give it new titles. So Feminism 101, what is it going to do for my family? In these books that you have, you'll see that it's been renamed and it's Empowered Mothers and Daughters. Some of these resources that are in here are more adult, like it's Tucker Carlson talking really fast. How do you talk about that with your little kids? Like you obviously want to, but how? So if you turn on page 29, so you're going to scan it as a parent. They're around 5 to 10 minutes. And you just do it before dinner time or bedtime so that you have the talking points with your kids because you know your kids best. What do they need to learn? So this is the summary right here. So you kind of have the general idea of what it is. You start by playing this video. Sometimes it's a song, a video, a book being read, but it's an easy entryway that gets them excited. I showed it to my kids, this video, with his hand shaking. I said, this man is being brave because people will cancel him and they're saying, oh, you're fine. You're at the top of the food chain or the, privilege ladder or whatever it is. And so next to it in this family one is the video by Sarah Bareilles, the cover by One Voice Children's Choir about being brave. And you get to watch that with your kids and you say, what's it like to be brave? And did you know that men are standing up and saying, it's not fair my kids are taken away from me and I don't get to have them in my divorce proceedings because men are seen as unimportant. And to have that conversation with your kids, look how brave these men are. When are you brave? And so the whole purpose of this is also not only to teach your kid, but to bond with them. So the question is for them, have you or someone you know ever stood up against a crowd? Tell about it. Now these cards can be cut up and put at the dinner table. They're free. They're downloadable from the internet. There's 10 resources and there's also activities at the beginning. There's activities at the beginning and then there are 2 role plays for each unit. And the role plays help the kids internalize these talking points. And it says, someone is criticizing you for choosing to have sexual integrity or making fun of your beliefs that sex should be safe for marriage. What would you say? These talking points are not only put with role plays, but they're also put with games. Sharing these resources will be such a light to our communities, to their friends. And so that's an important piece of this is the share piece, because that's where the change will start, especially with your kids. They'll find other people to stand up with them as they share.
each month is one topic. So right now we have 5 ready to go, and we're as rapidly as possible moving through, try to get the rest of the units up so that you can do it. And a lot of conversation I have with people is, why are the people on the left or progressives, or why are they doing this? What makes them tick? Why do people do what they do, and why do we? And this, years ago, while in New York attending the UN meeting, when I first got involved, the pro-family, pro-life effort was very, very small. There were very few of us, enough to sit around a very small table. And there was a gentleman by the name of Austin Roos, who was with Catholic Family Human Rights Institute. And we were there, and it was women and Austin. Austin's very outspoken, very strong personality. Some of you probably have read some of his material. So the discussion was about, okay, we need to figure out a way to find common ground. We're gonna have a luncheon. We're gonna bring the tablecloth and the food, and we're all gonna sit down and we're gonna talk with Planned Parenthood and NARAL and all of the national organization for women. We're just gonna do this. And Austin's face got redder and redder. And finally he pushed his chair back away from the table and he said, you do what you want to do, but I'm not gonna have any part of that. These people are baby killers. I was like, oh, come on, Austin, please. You know, is that a little extreme? And as time went on, it was, okay, you know, I don't understand this. Why would someone want to wear a t-shirt that said, I have an abortion? Why would a woman film her abortion? Why would Planned Parenthood sell fetal body parts? Why would, for every 100 abortions, there's only 2 adoptions? Why? What is this? Why would HIV, rather than containment, back in the early 80s, some of you were small children then, if you were even alive, there was none of the disease protocols implemented with HIV. It didn't happen. And thus, even though HIV in the United States only went primarily into intravenous drug users and into men who have sex with men, MSM, that's how they say it. But in Africa, it decimated a continent, literally decimated Africa. Hundreds of thousands of AIDS orphans. You know, what's this about? How did we get to an Olympian now is posing for Vanity Fair? How did we get to just this last few weeks? This gentleman at University of Pennsylvania, who swam on the boys team, now swims as the female on the female swimming team, and is breaking all NCAA records. I mean, the closest woman to him is 36 seconds behind. How did we get there? How at the UN do they hand out books by Girl Scouts of America, handing these books out where it says you don't have to tell your partner if you're HIV positive? How does that work? How could you hand out condoms at a Girl Scout event that have, and I picked these up at a Girl Scout event, so look at the combinations here. Where does that come from? And here's the answer. You look for the highest value that a group or an individual hold, and then you will understand their thoughts and actions. The highest value is what binds a group together, what they would rally around, organize, and protest for. And that comes from Jonathan Haidt. Highly recommend the book, The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. Jonathan, here's his book, has an interesting, it's morals and values platforms. Some of you might even be familiar with his work. And he has broken it out in human beings. There are 6 platforms that people base their morals on. And you can see them there: care, compassion, fairness / equality, liberty, loyalty, the sacred, which is religion, and authority. But here's the interesting thing. Conservatives, think of it as taste buds. Some people, you taste things differently. Conservatives can taste all 6. People on the left can taste only 2. Care, compassion, fairness, and equality. That's where their morals come from, are those 2 values platforms. And I think you'll see how that plays out if you think about it. And as I looked at this, one of the values of understanding this is it enables you to communicate more clearly. If you know that someone, your neighbor, your friend, comes from that persuasion and has that as a values platform, you talk to them in that language. So the left's 3 highest values. And as I looked at this, I thought within my work within the United Nations and everything I've seen over the years, it breaks out into these 3 things: sexual liberty, equality / now the new word is equity, and environment. A lot of people are surprised by the environment. Anyone want to guess what people on the right, conservatives, what their top 3 values are?
God, family, country.
Close. Family.
Liberty, family, God.
Yeah, here we go. You hear it a lot. Faith, family, freedom. So we're going to talk about sexual liberty because a lot of our topics started right here. So what does sexual liberty look like? And as a definition, I think this sounds outrageous and it's true. This is the value. Every person, regardless of age, has the right to choose his or her sexual behavior and express it freely without inhibiting judgment from society. And here's the key too: society's obligation is to alleviate any negative consequences that may result from sexual liberty. Seriously, this is it. And if I don't know, maybe some of you lean more that direction. And usually if I have people they nod their head, this is the belief set. So what does it produce? Certainly the word for them is sex positive, thruples, prostitution, porn. There are no prostitutions, it's sex work. That's how, because you should be able to do it if you choose to do it. Breakdown of marriage, cohabitation, HIV, AIDS, all of this falls under that rubric of sexual liberty. And if you think about that's the moral platform, this makes sense. The transgender stuff makes sense. The reason they wouldn't introduce disease protocols for the HIV epidemic was it would have inhibited sexual liberty, and that exists today. All of this stuff, sexual liberty, you should be free. Women have to be equal. They should be free. And a lot of these are a lot of crossover. You have to be free to be like man. If you were to get pregnant, and biologically that's a women's reality, they have to eliminate that. And that's why the hyper focus on abortion, and that's become the sacrament of feminism today because of sexual liberty. Well, real quick, how many of you have followed in Mississippi the Supreme Court oral arguments? And you know out of it that the Supreme Court Justice Amy Barrett made the comment during the oral arguments to one of the counsel for the plaintiff that, well, you have adoption. Did you know that's ignited a firestorm? Yeah, it has. And as adoptive parents, I know, Brooke, you are, and maybe some others in the room, highly, the bottom line is every woman has the right to a dead baby. So if you do get pregnant, you have the right to abort that baby. That's what would explain why politicians would vote against a Born Alive Infant Act, because women have a right to a dead baby. So all of that fits under sexual liberty. And here's the bottom line. You can have sexual liberty or you can have strong families, but you can't have both. Sexual liberty by definition is anti-family. What about equality, equity? It basically means sameness. You've got to have the same, not just equality of opportunity, you got to have equality of outcome. You've got to be the same. How does that play out? You'll recognize, the women's rights, human rights, everything is race, class, gender, social justice, and everything that falls under this. That's because of that equality piece. Reproductive rights or civil rights. This is interesting. Have you ever thought about religion as a purveyor of inequality? I don't have any idea how many come from religious backgrounds, but in religion, is particularly in Christian religion, and actually in most world religions, there is an afterlife. And some will get there and some will not. Some will end up in a good place, some might not. Think about that for a minute. It creates inequality. And that is a major problem for people who come from that other values platform. So when you see attacks on religion, realize it stems from equality. That's why this sign is ubiquitous, this equality, because that's what appeals to the moral platform. So lastly, the environment. Again, sexual liberty. Now, environment, what does that look like? Again, this is the piece that kind of confuses people. Doesn't make more sense, the population control, global warming and the push for that, because that creates inequality. It also, the world has too many people because you have a worship of the earth. Also, did you know that Wicca, which is worship of Mother Earth, Gaia, and the environment, is the fastest growing religion on college campuses today? Again, global warming right here. What about the pet culture? When I grew up and early married, the pet aisle in the grocery store was very, very small. Now it's massive. I mean, you had to look for dog food or cat food. Now it's absorbed. People have pets, not children. That's all part of the environmental piece. And it's all part of that values platform. So here's the deal on this. We assume that people that come from a more traditional conservative value set, we think that we are moral. Please understand, the people that you will probably show up with at a school board meeting have morals too. And they would be just as shocked, and they are just as shocked and disgusted at your morals and your values as we are at theirs. And it does no good to get into what my dad would say, a spitting match about my morality is better than your morality. Waste of time. Don't go there. Don't do it, because here's the issue. The real question is, the conversation needs to be kept, and it will keep you out of a lot of hot water. What does your position, what does your morality produce? If you can keep the conversation right there and the consequences, both positive and negative, you will be much more successful. So on that note, I know we're running out of time. Wendy Wixom, President of United Families International, is just going to give you some basic trends, and then we're going to go to a Q&A. Encapsulate what you're seeing, what's coming down from the UN, what are we looking at? And this is what this is.
So we've got four basic trends that we're going to share. The first one is that secular forces aren't coming after religion per se. They are coming after certain doctrines housed within certain religions, specifically the doctrine of the family. Within the United Nations system, appointed independent experts study and report back to the Human Rights Council on a variety of topics. The Human Rights Council increasingly fills these highly influential rapporteur positions with activists promoting extreme positions, making those positions mainstream. The UN Rapporteur on Freedom of Religion and Belief, in his 2020 annual report, rather than focusing on internationally recognized violations of religious freedom, he accused people of faith of discrimination if they oppose abortion, the redefinition of marriage, the dismantling of biologically immutable sex and gender distinctions between males and females, going so far as to recommend state intervention in matters of troublesome religious doctrine. Earlier this year, the UN Rapporteur on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity, or SOGI, asked the international community for help in creating a blacklist comprised of organizations and individuals that oppose sexual rights. He asked for examples of public expression or statements by political and/or religious leaders. Examples where the concept of gender has been used in religious narratives or narratives of tradition, traditional values, or protection of the family, to identify those who stand in opposition to LGBT laws and policies. This effort to name and shame might best be described as an effort to create international heresy laws. It is an effort to paint religious individuals as extremists and silence them. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act, or RFRA. The federal RFRA prohibits governments and states from substantially burdening a person's exercise of religion unless there's a compelling government interest. RFRA passed 30 years ago in 1993 with almost unanimous support. Fast forward 5 to 7 years, the last 5 to 7 years, where massive backlash and charges of bigotry and hatred befall any state legislature who attempts to add RFRA protections to law. Trend 2, the rise and preeminence of political religions. Political religions include social justice, including critical race theory, identity politics, intersectionality, all cut from the same cloth. They're political religions. Sexual rights, including LGBT activism, particularly gender identity theory. This theory renders biological sex meaningless, severely compromises opportunity, safety, and privacy rights of women and girls, and compels people to communicate they believe things that are not true. In short, it denies biological reality. Trend 3, prioritization of adult desires over children's needs. Best exemplified by this quote: "You can have sexual liberation or you can have strong families, but you can't have both." Or more simply stated, when we as a culture walked away from chastity, we walked away from our children. We see an accelerating trajectory away from the nuclear family. Premarital sex is the norm, rising cohabitation, falling marriage rates, easy divorce, and alternative forms of the family, with children bearing the brunt. The word family has fallen into such disfavor that pro-family groups went almost 5 years without being able to get the word family inserted into UN negotiated documents. Recently, the National Council on Family Relations, NCFR, stated that the nuclear family, consisting of father, mother, and children, is an extension of white supremacy. The NCFR recently conducted a webinar entitled "Culture and Law No Longer Privilege Biological Parents. The words mother, father, and parents are being disallowed in the name of fostering diversity and not making those without feel bad. Now the preferred language of birth certificates is parent A and parent B." Normalization of surrogacy and third-party reproduction taken to this extreme, we now see 3 men given the legal status of parent to 1 child. Trend 4. The women's rights movement, or feminism, continues to accelerate away from helping women in the realm of harming women. We see a continuing erasure of women by entities that demand the use of terms such as persons who become pregnant or persons who lactate. Even the United Nations agency, UN Women, has asked their affiliates to move away from using the term women, deeming it discriminatory. Kind of odd there. The Equal Rights Amendment, ERA, is once again a major issue. What is thought by many to be a pro-woman amendment is actually the vehicle through which women and girls' legitimate needs and rights will be compromised. If law is not permitted to recognize the distinctions between the sexes, it cannot recognize and account for the needs and vulnerabilities of females with regard to pregnancy, motherhood, and the ever-present susceptibility to male violence. A sex-blind system is not a good thing, especially for women. Do you still want me to go into the other side?
We don't have a ton of time to do that because
Okay.
I wanted to.
Go for it. Do you want me to
Just
take
real-
mine off?
No, you can leave it right there. Just another trend that I didn't want to get out of here without talking about is the movement towards non-binary, meaning androgyny. There is no sex. It started, it really does trickle down out of the UN, the international system, because there isn't as much oversight. So you see all of these ideas from academia in particular, get traction there. So think about it this way. If you have women on one side, it's a continuum, I hope you can see my hands, and men on the other. And the goal of feminism is to move them together, right? They have to be the same. Okay, as they move together, think about this for a minute, and they're all the same. It gets really crowded in there. Seriously, we're all alike. And so it makes more sense that men now, we've been telling them we're the same. So men say, yep, we are the same. And in fact, we'll be just like you. We'll participate in your sports. We'll be in your women-only spaces. We'll be in women's prisons. Why should I be in a male prison if I know it's safer in the women's prison? And when you push them together and make them the same, you cannot protect women. In fact, men will prevail. If that space is narrowed, men will prevail. So what we thought with feminism is that we were helping by equality, moving them to the men. You are literally eliminating women and guaranteeing that men will fill that space. So what Wendy was referencing, be sure to go on United Family's website. If you want more current information, there is World Family News. We'll let you go look, and that's 11 articles every single day. Well, not on the weekends, but 5 days a week of the things that are happening in the world. You will have the most updated thing. We're coming out with an app here within a month, probably launch in January with an app if you want to put that on your phone. Another great resource if you want to get involved legislatively, on the United Families website, there is a state page. You can find out all of the information about your state legislature, who the people are, what school laws are. It's all there. And also, for those of you that are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, note this, write this down: familyproclamationproject.org. familyproclamationproject.org. On that website, you will find the family proclamation broken out, and almost every line we have doctrine or spoken word. So words from the leaders of the church. We have the scriptures that are associated with that paragraph or that sentence, and the science. Even if you're not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's a ton of science on there that you will want to access. So again, we're out of time. We want to have some Q&A. Just motherhood is not the place dreams go home to die. It's the place that dreams come alive. And seeing you all gives me so much hope. It's been a very lonely pro-family, pro-life world for many years. And that sea change has happened. The mama bears are awake. And let's not just make 2021 the year of the bear. Let's make this now the decade of the bear. And better yet, the generation of the mama bear. And as I look at you, I really, for such a time as this, you are that. Thank you for your kindness and listening. And we will take questions in regard to HomeFront Kids, HomeFront, the pro-family, pro-life effort is in general. How do you want to do questions? Take from in the room, if anybody in the chat.
We'll share questions from online.
Okay.
So I actually have, I guess I can come over here now.
Come right in here and ask your question.
I know. Hey, everybody. I guess I'm on here and on here. So I love how, and I, like you said, not everyone's a member of the church, but I love how we can use that resource. And I was just on a chat today where they were talking about the lesson for next week is on the proclamation to the family. And I'm a Sunday school teacher, and they were saying they're very, very concerned about how to sensitively talk about that, because we just recently saw the 18% of families are now married parents for families. That was recently something I saw, an article.
Okay, back up. Only 17?
18%. Only 18% of households in America have married parents.
Is that true?
So you talking about
That's probably
Married. 18%. I was remembering it was like I was like shocked that half of people were divorced, and now it's even smaller. But I love that we can tie this into what we're doing as a faith community. And Brooke mentioned that the HomeFront Project kids
can be something to use with our children as we're trying to complete their goals and our social, our mental, physical,
intellectual,
yes,
social,
and spiritual goals that we have as we're doing that work with our children.
Preview page.
What's the what's the program called? It's our children,
Youth
yeah, just the children youth program. There's no fancy name for it anymore. It used to be our activity days and our youth program, but that we can tie those things in together so that we're not double dipping
Every month.
and everything.
there's a
So
goal.
we tell about that. I just wanted people to understand how those can tie together. Sorry. So that we can, we have a lot as moms to do. So
Yeah. So every month, at the beginning of the topic, there is activities you can do that will meet the social, intellectual, physical. There's a variety. So this is make something grandma used to make and share with the family, create a piece of art. So that could be emotional, but every single time you'll have that to complete those goals with your kids. And so to make it, fit into multiple projects as busy moms, we want to, be able to use it on various fronts.
So doing this HomeFront project could be a goal you set with your kids and then meet a whole bunch of goals.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. So that was just one of the things I wanted to.
Who's
mention.
filling the questions? Any?
I am.
I mean, I guess mine is.
Come up here so that they actually can hear you. So I don't have, or you don't want to, so I don't have to interpret.
Let's stand right there.
I feel bad that I would not get it right.
The microphone is right there too.
Well, my question is not that specific. And I guess all this stuff is what keeps me up at night anyway, doom and gloom. And I mean, I guess one of the good things is people are waking up, right, with like recent elections across the country even. But can you give like some good things that can maybe like we can hope for in the future that are gonna stop this huge wave? Because it just seems like I don't see any major movements to like give me hope.
Okay.
That's what
Great question. Hope. We are living hope right now. It may not, when you look at 1973, when Roe v. Wade, and then a few years later with Casey, it was bleak. In fact, even the religious community, like the Southern Baptists, actually supported abortion back in 1973, if you can imagine that. Now we see a shift in young people's views of abortion. They are much, much more pro-life. It's changing slowly. I mean, we literally could overturn Roe. In this June, it could be overturned. Now, the bad news is it doesn't mean that abortion is going away. It just means it's going to be returned to the states. And they predict that somewhere around, I think the last number I saw is that 28 states would outlaw abortion. That is almost inconceivable. And it was the continual efforts of people to speak on life and to show the importance of unborn children and to show the science. And I see even with marriage and family, the chickens do come home to roost, and you will see people recognizing marriage is important. In fact, that's shifting. And there's a unit on population. I mean, we're in big trouble. Things will change. It's already changing. Russia pays, they are extremely pro-family right now. 5 years ago, within the United Nations systems, I never would have gone to a Russian delegate to get support for pro-family issues. Never would have, or pro-life issues. Now they are our strongest supporters. Hungary, South Korea, they all realize it really does take the consequences. When they see the consequences of bad philosophy, people begin to realize, whoa, not working out. And the good news too, you live the life that and show that ideal. And even if you're not living the ideal or have the ability to do the traditional nuclear family, it's still, you talk about it, you promote it, you are walking living examples of the truth, and you are the hope. It will change, it will shift. And one interesting thing, there's a man by the name of Alan Carlson, who Howard Center, I don't know if any of you followed the World Congress of Families. He has a theory that there is a shift every 50 years. And in his mind, we are approaching the 50 years. Some people say 80 years, and it depends on who you're talking to. But there is definitely a reckoning coming, and you will be part of it. You are part of that shift and that change. Hope, absolutely. plenty of it. And you know, the thing, for years, I had this hanging on my wall, and it said, duty is ours, results belong to God. Because it's depressing. This work can sometimes really get you down. But I had to know it didn't really matter. I have to stand up, and that's all I'm required to do is speak truth. And truth is like a line. It will go forward by itself. So you speak the truth and it will happen. Plenty of hope.
Can I add something?
Please, Brooke, come up here.
That's what they all.
What's that?
They're gonna give each other courage too.
Another thing is the rising generation. I think they're very solid. I think they have strong, like my kids, we accidentally were at a pro-abortion rally at the Capitol in Salt Lake. And they're 8 and 9. I hadn't yet told them what abortion is. They know now. But I said, yeah, they want to kill babies in the mommy's tummy. And we were walking away, and I was just hoping we could stay away from the anger and yelling that we heard. And we came back, and my daughter, who's 8, she started going over there and yelling, boo. And I was like, no. We don't want to fight. They're here to give their opinion. And she's yelling boo. And so we walked, and then my other son started joining her yelling boo. And then we put him in the car. And we're like, okay, just don't fight. They get to say their piece. And then I looked back, and he was staring out the window, sticking his tongue at everybody, not yelling boo. And I had just said it's wrong, but that gave me a lot of hope, was that these kids are strong. And as so what we're doing is starting in January, we're going to start with the first month, and we're going to have it in this same room, and everybody's going to do this together with their families and then come report back. And we're having a youth class. So we have a separate room for youth, because at that age, teenagers get a lot of support from their peers. And so that's an important piece of doing this. Parents to say what's working, keep it going, even if you watch just one. Come hear the stories from others, so the next month you're going to do better. So monthly, we will be supporting. It's the 4th Monday of every month. There's a Facebook group, HomeFront Project Kids, so that people can support each other in doing this program. And our youth can be that hope, be that light that every 50 years that you were talking about. Because when I saw my kids who just found out what abortion was booing, I was like, yay, there's hope for our children. And that's the light that keeps me going.
More questions. Wendy, why don't you come up here and weigh in? Come tell us your question.
I was gonna respond really quick before she asked her question about the hope one. Because I think that as you guys are learning, and as we're seeing so many mama bears arising and understanding what's going on, and as you have communications with others and help others understand, and you're letting them know about UPU, and hey, here's this great resource, and look what they're doing, and helping everyone to become aware of what's going on in the world. It's like that little scale that Brooke was talking about, how if it goes through and no one shares anything to the contrary, then they're going to say the sky is green, right? But if you are one by one having a conversation or sharing something, then you're going to help someone else to go, I'm not alone in feeling this. And there's other people that feel this way too. And you're going to be able to share that hope, and it's going to help other people to have courage to stand up and recognize that what they believe is not so foreign and odd, which is what we're hearing in society today. So yes, your question, sorry.
Yeah, it's better than not having them.
Okay.
So we don't have to translate it. So
So with your slideshow, you had said that I'm gonna slaughter it, but it was something to the effect of the first person that they hear about was something that to the child considers is the expert on the matter. So my first question was, what if they hear from somebody else? With clearing preschool and with family and everybody, they're hearing from these experts that don't share our values. So what is your suggestion of remedying that and getting back into that position of being the expert with your kid when the first influence is from sources that we don't trust. And then my second question is, a lot of these things are going to feel overwhelming. I mean, being on UPU and talking with these things about Brooke and just the QR codes and the family discussions and all that seems really overwhelming. It's just, it's a lot to do. It's a lot to start. So what would your, like, if you could suggest for parents just to focus on one or two things, what would your suggestions be if they can only do one or two things with their families, to just start, to just engender that hope, to just get these conversations going? What would those be?
If I only had a little bit of time, and we went through this exercise when Brooke and UPU were getting ready to do the HomeFront or the HomeFront kids lessons, I said, my sense of it is we need to take each one of these topics and distill it down. What are the 3 or 4, if you didn't understand anything else, what would parents need to understand? And they are at the very beginning of the units. And if you just know those, you yourself take a few minutes, become knowledgeable on these issues, and you'll find the moments. Even if you're not formally doing it, I think you're going to find the moments. But if you don't know the facts on it, there's no hope for your children. And please know your children are being indoctrinated. They swim in it. There's no way they have not already absorbed social justice. There's no way they have. So you have to be able to show the counter side, and I would say the facts, the truth, whatever you want. They will hear it, but it begins with you understanding it. So learn on the HomeFront kids those top 3 or 4 items, and that's the essence of that issue or that topic. If that's all.
Sorry, is that the top 3 for each month, or is that the top 3?
Yeah, for each month.
Okay. So right here, the table of contents, the very first page has the preview. So right here, regularly discuss the importance of motherhood. Motherhood should not be an afterthought. So that's the one thing.
Yeah.
Show that on the thing. Yeah, on the little camera bar.
Yeah, we can. Just pull it back up.
So this is
fire hose here.
table.
Bring it like really close.
This is the table of contents, and it will show you which page it's on, and there's a preview. So in the preview section, this yellow box will have just what you need to talk about. So it says regularly discuss the importance of motherhood. Motherhood should not be an afterthought. And sometimes it's as simple as, I love hearing about how your day went at school, because it makes me so proud to know that you did good on your test, or you made a friend, or whatever. This is for empowered father and sons. There's 2 main ideas, and fathers are important to their children, and men and boys play an important role in society. Males matter. And I just turned to my son a lot after I read this, and I said, oh my goodness, just what you did, you're going to be such a good dad. Do you know how happy your kids are going to be to have you as a dad? And so each one of these has one thing to do. And I promise you, these resources that they have sourced are absolutely phenomenal. Even if you just watch one, they're entertaining, they're clear, concise, they're powerful, and they'll change you, and your children will sense that change. And so even if you just open it up and scan one randomly, you'll be doing awesome things.
Yeah, we worked really hard to curate the best articles, the best videos that would build a cohesive picture of the issue. So you educate yourself, even if you can't sit down with your children and do that. If you know it, hopefully it will transition through there. And yes, a teen has already absorbed all this stuff, but they need to hear the flip side, because if you're not talking about it, not going in at all. Wendy?
Well, I was just gonna say, the person our friend that we got that quote from, she is the one who started an organization called Them Before Us. And she has worked with her kids from the time they were little and helping them to understand the issues. And she's helped them to see different issues in life. Like just as she's, talking about things, she's helped them research and look at the research. And so they're discovering this for themselves. she talks about the consequences of these different things with them, so that they're seeing this in everyday life. And she's told me various stories about how exciting it is, because when her child gets to, I'm trying to remember the exact, I should have called her and asked her before we came, but when they're younger, she has kind of more of the lived life experience that she tries to introduce talking with them or whatever. And as they get older, she does more research with them and helps them to understand that and communicating it. And she's always talking talking points. Yeah.
Learn the science.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's your best. You can use the science on these issues in so many ways. You don't have to mention religion. You don't have to mention God.
The talking points are phenomenal. That was a question from online. Will this program address having a divorced home where the values are different and those types of things? And the idea of, you know, how does it fit into all different families, all different value systems?
So these talking points are great. And so she's created talking points with her kids. And it's been interesting to hear stories from her where her kids come back and they come home and they're like, Mom, I had this experience today. And I was talking with a friend and we were supposed to do this. And, you know, they were talking about, okay, so her mom is
Katie Faust.
Katie Force. Yeah, her mom is a lesbian and is married to her partner. And so her daughter was talking and they were saying, oh, you know, and they had some conversation. This friend,
high school age, right?
Yeah, I think it was high school, maybe, yeah, ninth grade-ish. And they were talking about, you know, some of the issues, and they were saying, oh, is it this sad? And she goes, gosh, you know what's really sad is that 80 something percent of males in prison are fatherless. Isn't that sad? And she's learned how to take these talking points to help people understand, like, wow, you know, and if we could have families that were, you know, had fathers in them, then gosh, you know, isn't that sad that that's, you know, where they are. So they've learned how to use these talking points in communication to help, you know, express the issues and help. So as to your question about divorce and how these units, the talking points will go through it and it'll talk about the different science behind things and different ways to discuss things and different issues. And I'm trying to remember what else you asked on it.
Just that you can use these and address those types of topics.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it's a great way to discuss with people, you know, and have a conversation. I think that's one of the questions.
And the issues guides are part of each one of the units on HomeFront, and they're just packed full of science, studies, citations. Learn them and use them. For me, when you look at the issues, I've already told you, I like facts. And that was all I wanted to talk about for a number of years. And then I realized, oh my gosh, people respond to story. And if you can combine story, some kind of narrative, preferably personal, with facts, with research, with science, it becomes supercharged. And in a faith community, if you can combine the narrative, the story, with the facts, with whatever theological basis or doctrine, puts everything in hyperdrive. Learn to speak in those three things. We call it the 3D teaching: data, doctrine, and documentary or dialogue. 3D, just remember. And if you can incorporate that, to your point, you're not going to do it all at once, but over time, tell the story, tell the science. And if you come from a religious community, tell your theological basis and doctrine with it. And the question on the ideal comes up all the time. And I've noticed with social justice and that reframe, I hate to use the term millennials or Gen Z, it comes from this new religion of tolerance, that you can't speak about the ideal. You're always challenged, well, you're shaming people if you speak about the ideal. Now just stop for a moment and think, if we never talked about the ideal, if we never promoted the ideal, even if you don't live in that circumstance right now, that's okay. You can still promote the ideal. You start right now in your circumstance that you're in. There's today and there's tomorrow, and you make it better. We have a lot of people who come from divorce situations or less than ideal situations. I mean, for heaven's sakes, Katie Faust is one of the best spokespeople for children's rights and what children need. And and she has a mother who is in a lesbian relationship. I mean, that gives her more power. You can speak from experience if you haven't lived the ideal. You can say, I know what this does, and I know it could be better, and let's make it better for my children and for yours and for society.
And to Katie's point, she's, you know, she tells people, well, of course I love my mom's partner. I love her dearly, but she will never replace my father. You know, there are things that my father provides for me that my mom's partner could never provide. And so I need both my mother and my father in my life. And so do children, you know, and then she'll talk about the science and the facts of the benefits of having a father in the home and so forth. So, yeah.
And each
Any
of the
other-
units will give you the basis to be able to talk about it and understand it.
Yes,
I just sit here.
Yeah.
whatever you want.
Wendy's gonna repeat what you said.
Yeah, so I have an almost 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I'm kind of scared. My daughter's going into first grade next year, so I'm kind of terrified of which school to choose. But what age would you suggest starting this, and then to kind of counteract what they're getting if they have to go into a public school?
I think counteracting what's going on begins by just creating a place where you can have dialogue with your children. And that is going to be your biggest tool, is making sure that when your child comes to you and says something that you're like, what on earth? What did they just hear? What were they taught? You're not making them so scared by your response that they're like freaking out, you know, but that you are able to calmly handle the situation and talk about it with them and help them to work through it. And to have that conversation. Oh, so what did you learn about in school today? And, you know, keep that dialogue going right from the start so that it's not odd when they come home in 7th grade or 9th grade and you're like, oh, how was school today? What did you talk about? Let's see, you had health today. How was health? You know, what are you studying right now? And be able to ask those questions without it seeming strange that all of a sudden mom wants to know what, you know, what's going on. I think that's a huge part of helping
And
to
an age demo, a 2-year-old can learn from
Yeah.
this as well.
Oh yeah, it was made for, I'm a 3rd through 8th grade teacher. And so that's kind of was the target for this, you can watch that side, write some things you might want to say, but then just asking them like simple questions, like tell about a time when you saw a man open a door for a woman or let her go first. How did it make you feel? You know, it's highlighting little things about how men are important, and then just having that conversation. A lot of these questions are just basic. When people are unfair, how do you create peace? You know, your 2-year-old and your 6-year-old can still do that, even if it's just the questions. But watching Nelson Mandela being released on the video, and then you say, look at this man, he was looking for peace the whole time. And it's your narration, it's sharing with them. It's just a gateway to open wherever it goes, but you can definitely do it for those ages.
I love that. I have a first grade
Can they
little
hear you?
boy. I have a first grade little boy, so hope you can hear me. But and it is hard to start dialogue with those little ones. But he is I actually have a daughter named Nellie, so you're trying to say negative Nellie, and he would be boy, so I don't know. But he struggles sometimes. First grade is hard, but one of the things I ask him at the end of the day, I'll say, hello everyone. I'll say, tell me 2 things you liked at school and 1 thing that was hard or you didn't like. So we try and find 2 positives for the 1 negative. And sometimes it's hard, but he eventually will find, you know, we work on that. But those are really simple questions that my little first grade son can think about and process his day and tell me, you know, 2 positives, 1 negative. And it's a good way for us to have dialogue. And then we can talk a little bit about the negative thing and address that and work on it. But, you know, first grade, it's a really great age. And speaking of, and I know we're at time, but their class did a Thanksgiving dinner lunch at their school. And we have to remember we have good teachers and we have good schools and we have wonderful things. And they had the girls dressed up in fancy clothes and the boys had to wear their Sunday best. And Trevor so one of the things he didn't like about school that day was because he felt so silly because he had to pull out the chair for the girl and have the girl sit in the chair. and push in the chair and do that. And I was so happy as a mom that I had a school and a teacher in a classroom where they were teaching my son to respect girls at that little age of first grade. And we could have a little conversation about how that may have felt silly, but that is what we do. And then we talked about the things that his father does for me to show respect for girls. And so we do have amazing things happening in our schools still. And we need to look for those opportunities and find them and highlight those positive things that are still being taught in our schools to our kids. So it was awesome.
And there are good teachers,
Oh yeah.
but know that the curriculum that's coming is coming out of Texas and California. So even this amazing teacher has pressure coming on her. So you get into the schools and let her know what you as parents want. Give her support
Yes.
and enable her to do it, because she's got intense pressure. I'm shocked she was allowed to do that.
It was wonderful.
In this day and age,
I was so
I'm
surprised
really
too.
shocked.
It was fabulous.
So it is fabulous. So we don't want to villainize the education system entirely, but no, the National Education Association and the curriculum is not good. You're going to have to follow it. You're going to have to divide and conquer. Get with other like-minded people in schools. And why don't you take the math curriculum? Why don't you take social studies, history? Divide it up. Know what's in that curriculum. Speak up. And yeah, don't make villains of our teachers, but be aware it's in your schools for sure. So
Okay. Well,
That's all our questions from online, so we're in for time, huh, Brooke?
yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Say hello to everybody.
Thank you to Marcia and Wendy and there we go.
So I can't